Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Vishal here. So you're the co-founder and CEO of LinkSquares. You're an LP in Hyperplane. You were the Earnest and Young Entrepreneur finalist of the one of the finalists of the year. So you're somebody that has a great grip on this financial and technology space. You're leading the way with AI currently in the contract space. I think you have the foremost company in that department. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ben.
Awesome. So where did entrepreneurship and that passion begin for you? Like, was it when you were a kid, or how did that kind of get started?
Yeah, my dad's an entrepreneur, and so he started a company in our basement, like a really hardcore tech company, hardware company using lasers and laser amplifiers, and I grew up seeing like everything, the first logo in his first office, and watching his company expand. I used to help him with what logos I thought were cool when I was a kid, and Uh, God, it wasn't until maybe LinkSquares was maybe 6 years old that the company, or my company, had overtaken my father's in size. So I kind of grew up that way, but I never really leaned towards making it like a massive priority in my life. I wouldn't say I would wake up every day and be like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I'm just stuck in a job for now. Like maybe more like opportunistic, let's look and see how the world is. And uh, I found the opportunity to found a company in 2015 and kind of off to the races from there.
Mhm. So I think, just based on some of the reading I had, you kind of were working on closing an acquisition, and then you kind of realized that this you had this idea around then because of the complexities around understanding the contracts during that time. Could you just speak to a little bit of how the idea came about for Link Squares?
Yeah, my co-founder and I both worked at the same company, and that company got bought by a bigger company. We weren't the founders or anything; we were just like employees. And I had a role in operations, so that just meant I used to do odd projects. And as this bigger company was acquiring the company that we worked at, they wanted to understand what we had agreed to in customer contracts. And that was the first time that I really started feeling some like real firsthand pain around, well, if businesses don't know what's inside contracts they've already signed, then how are they able to do anything? Like, how are they able to renew customers and take a static price increase or move data from one cloud provider to another, which actually was the use case during that acquisition. And it was like a very eye-opening type of experience that we had thousands of customers and a lot of them had negotiated our contract, or we were using a bigger customer's contract for how they procure software. Complete disorganization, not centralized into one repository. Many of them were scanned PDFs, like maybe more than three quarters were scanned PDFs, so you can't search them, like Control F, Command F. And it was interesting enough that my co-founder and I started working on it Wednesday nights and Sundays. And Wednesday nights and Sundays were for exploring, research. And eventually, enough people said the general counsel at companies, they're the ones that have this responsibility to know. And we knew zero general counsel, so we just started cold emailing general counsels and kind of began to form a thesis and did a lot of that upfront, really important discovery work, and kind of took it from there.
Mhm. Yeah. So how did you guys like build the first version of it? Was it you needed funding to go and get going, or just like you had the software experience and you built it yourself? How did that begin?
Yeah, we did a little, friends and family round, and my dad was our first angel investor, so that was great. I had knowledge of using outsourced engineering teams abroad, and we found a team on the internet, and so many of my friends are and former colleagues are exceptional software developers and product managers, and so I had that some of that exposure too, and I was able to get help from some of my friends to vet a couple of dev shops and picked a really great dev shop. I had a lot of experience managing the build of software programs, so we made some UIs. I wrote up some specs and sent it over, and they started pushing code, and so that's kind of how we got started.
So how did you like determine what type of metrics you wanted to show to customers and what were the most important ones to focus on? Because I think that's a strong piece of like of the platform is that you have all this insight that you can't necessarily get without it.
Yeah, really the ROI from a metrics basis for anyone to become a customer really centered around if you were to review 5,000 contracts manually, how long would it take you? I mean, we're talking about hundreds of hours, thousands of
Yeah.
hours. You're doing it for thousands of hours, 8 hours a day. I mean, that is not even practical to even try to estimate or equate. So, really centered around the time save, the information, the richness of the information that we could create, the ability to report and create dashboards and have kind of information that would take you thousands of hours at fingertip in a matter of seconds. So really focus on that in terms of like the value type selling that we used to do and we still do today.
Mhm. So I think like now I read something recently that you can do about 115 answers to contract metadata in 20 seconds. So like how have you built this up that it's that quick and like what are some of your aspirations for speed and efficiency down the line?
Yeah, you're talking about our metadata extraction, and
Hmm.
that's the way that we can read a contract and actually create structured data by reading it using AI and extracting and creating answers. Uh, we knew that AI would be a really good use case for this type of problem that we were trying to solve, and uh, inventing it was actually quite difficult because AI and language processing is very much like an academic concept. It had been written about for decade, right? A decade in academic papers. It's one thing to know that something exists academically. There's another whole thing to be able to then productionize it. So
Mm.
it was really the intersection of like a science problem, which is can you read a contract and tell and accurately create metadata like who are the parties? What is the effective date? Does it have termination for convenience? Does it have auto renewal? What is the state of governing law? Like all those things, and then figuring out the steps in which we were going to take to actually build it, which requires like annotation, like which is just things you never thought you needed until the day you are going to build something. And how do you break down a problem to get there? Kind of really great timing. The kind of AI revolution that it was starting back then was really pinned up by some of the public cloud infrastructure providers. Like we're an AWS shop, so right around the same time, AWS was also investing in like machine learning and AI services that you could build a system and design a system. And so we had a great success, and they're great partners for us, AWS. And we were able to take advantage of some of their architecture services and components that my CTO Eric, who is an incredible engineer, were able to piece together and fabricate, and then yeah, the pipeline is really everything. I mean, as you invent technology, but then you think about thousands of companies using it, you got to think about like, well, how much is it going to cost for us to run? Back then, we were a little baby seed stage startup with 10 people, 12 people in the company. If we were to pay like a $200,000 AWS bill a month, it would like cripple the company back then. And so we had to like consider all these things like how much is it going to cost? Is it going to mess up our gross margin over time? Because that's like really important to try to keep gross margin as high as we can. And yeah, we came up with a system that I think is, and we know is like industry leading, but it's also like infinitely upgradable, which was like a big design decision we made. Like if we wanted to rebuild a model, could we push a new model and update the model? And yes, we needed that. We built it that way. Is it easy enough for a non-technical person like someone on our implementation team or success team to, turn it on, turn it off, and configure it? Very easy. Click a button and it's done. Doesn't need engineers on a command line because that'll slow us all down. And then just thinking about like end to end, how fast can we make it? I mean, certainly when we invented this in, I'd say 2018, it wasn't as fast as it is today. And so we have that kind of luxury and opportunity that we own the whole thing. We own the algorithms, we own the processing
Hmm.
pipeline. And ultimately those ended up being good decisions.
Would you say that you're a competitor to DocuSign or LegalZoom, and how would you say like you're differentiated from your biggest competitor?
Yeah, not so much LegalZoom. That's more like legal services. But yeah, for sure, there's lots of players in this space. DocuSign is certainly one of them. Yeah, obviously have a lot of respect for DocuSign and what they've done to kind of digitize the world in many ways. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to differentiate. You can certainly differentiate on the product offering. That's more like a war of feature. You know, how many? I have
Hmm.
700 features. Well, I have 13,000 features. And like, you can do a little bit of that, even though it's harder against, very well established players. Ultimately, people want to do business with those they know, like, and trust. And so to know us is to interact with our brand at a trade show or online digitally, which we are in control of that. And to like us is to engage with us, live in person on all different sort of events that we do. But to trust us is really in the sales process. Like, let's give you a free proof of concept, and let's show you the technology in the context of your docs. Let's show you what it could look like, the things you're trying to solve. It is rarely about software and more about like what problem are you trying to solve inside your business that our software can help, and kind of continuously focusing on that. Uh, are we solving pain? Are we a painkiller? Are we not a vitamin? We must be a painkiller because people buy painkillers in the form of business problem solutions.
Mhm. So you have a couple different customers that I'd be curious as to like what the use cases they benefited most from LinkSquares are. Like one of which would be DraftKings, Wayfair is another one. How specifically has your platform assisted them in the contract process? Like, has it been the insights more? Has it been the drafting? Like, what aspects have been most beneficial?
Yeah, so we had started with the analytics product on contracts you've already signed, but then kind of 3 years after that product went live and it had reached like very good maturity and it was selling really well and messaging was quite good, we then dreamed about making a totally kind of complete end-to-end contract management system where you could, draft your NDA or your terms of service or manage like procurement and buying of other things and kind of standardize the process where everyone can log in and see where everything is. You never have to ask your legal team, like, where is the state of this document that I asked you to help me go get signed, right? Everyone would kind of be able to see that. Um, yeah, customers certainly get value from the kind of end-to-end experience. The analytics product is very unique. Not many businesses have that level of metadata about contracts they've signed.
Hmm.
So that's like a very strong value proposition. And then really we then seek to with that product say like, well, you can proactively get out ahead of like changes to laws and standards. You can run reports. You can have a better eye on what you're agreeing to. And then if anything comes up, you need a one-off project, which really comes up all the time for legal teams. You'd be really well equipped to be able to answer those questions very efficiently and dump the answers to an Excel spreadsheet and kind of move on with your life. Pre-signature, yeah, it's all about deal acceleration, getting docs to the point of signing much faster, managing and enabling approvals and tasks so that, say a bigger department, bigger companies, maybe 5 or 6 departments, it would have to approve a document of maybe a certain contract size or certain regulatory things or security related, certainly finance, accounting, and have it all kind of in a nice buttoned up audit log. And everyone knows like who approved this contract. Even 2 years from now, you're trying to look back, kind of have all that historical knowledge. So yeah, companies use our software to move their business forward faster. I certainly think we're delivering that in their efforts to make more money and also kind of buy things uh, with better controls in place.
Hmm. Like, what would you say is like the cost amount, like the percentage that somebody can really save by using link scores versus like another type of a system that maybe or maybe not even having a system? Like, how much more efficient does this really improve someone's workflow?
Yeah, we've done some studying. There's a reduction of just kind of overall risk by like more than 50%. There is an ROI on doing things manually versus using our product at over 4 times. So if you're trying to solve a problem that costs 100K a year, essentially LinkSquares would be very attractive for you to be able to potentially spend a quarter of that and get the same value or even more. And so uh, it's definitely focused on efficiency gains and acceleration and kind of speed in which businesses can operate with our software
Mhm.
versus without.
Yeah. So when you were scaling up the business, you had to get your first kind of customers. Like, how did you get your first ones, and then how did you get customers like Wayfair and DraftKings? Like, what was kind of the process? Was it just you did good with one, and then word of mouth or advertising? Like, how's been your best way
Yeah,
to accrue customers?
yeah. The first year we ever sold the product in kind of the initial state that it was in, we got five customers. And
Huh.
in that five, only one was someone I knew. I was very focused on we need to get 10 people, 10 customers that don't know me, don't know my co-founder, didn't do me a favor, is not, someone's brother's uncle's, father that, kind of bought because of, I don't know, obligation or otherwise. We wanted like truly 10 unaffiliated customers. And in the first year, we got four, and one was a CFO of a company that I knew in town in Boston that were able to get there for our first customer ever. And so we were seeking very efficient capital, sales efficient type of ways to generate pipeline. For that, it was cold email for us. We bought a single tout app license. They were the only company that would sell us a single license of email nurturing software. Shout out to TK, who's a friend of mine now, the founder of the Tout app. That business was acquired by Marketo, but yeah, and then a 4 or 5 email sequence, real punchy, real short, couple of sentences, describe the business, and then we used to buy email address lists from a great partner that would mine them off LinkedIn. We would give them like
Huh.
LinkedIn parameters, companies of this size, these industries, these titles. We'll buy 25,000 email addresses of general counsels. And I don't know, with a 25-30% bounce rate was fine with us. And we just wanted to talk to people. And yeah, we just built a lot of pipeline and got better at selling it and hired our first employee who was like a BDR. And he's like a VP on our revenue team now, but he was a BDR and kind of taught him everything that we learned in a year and kind of continue to go from there.
Mhm. Yeah. So would you say like when if you're like procuring like a new type of deal and a new contract structure, can LinkSquares be very beneficial for improving that process, or would you say it's much more for types of deals that you've already done and you want to go and draft something similar to that?
Yeah, it's really every use case. So for example, to work with like very large brands, like let's say Whirlpool, right? They make appliances. Uh,
Hmm.
they would probably force a company of even very large scale into using their own contract. So that would be like we're trying to do a customer agreement, but we don't get to use our own terms of service. We have to use theirs. Obviously, now you're negotiating back and forth because sometimes those contracts can be used to buy enterprise software or like toilet paper. So you have to really kind of customize it down into stuff that makes sense. That just takes a long time using it in-house legal team or outside counsel working with their legal team. Sure, the product can help in immense ways to standardize, provide visibility, manage all those versions, help collaborate internally on deal points and business points that are very important. Yeah, and then just using your own contract many times over and over again with maybe lighter negotiations. That's one of the core value props, Ben, of why companies over 1,000 businesses now run on LinkSquares.
Hmm. So you recently did $100 million Series C financing, an $800 million valuation, which I think even was like a little bit, it was like around 10 to 15% of what the entire industry raises in funding throughout the year, I believe, or so in this category. So what was the purpose of the Series C, and like what are some of your aspirations with this fresh new capital that you got?
Yeah, really the motivation for fundraising any round of any size, any letter round is really to accelerate and build on what you learned, in the years previous. And the things that we learned in the year previous was we can grow our revenue extremely fast. LinkSquares had at a minimum grown 100% a minimum the last 4 years, every single year
Huh.
on our ARR, our annual recurring revenue. So we kind of had figured that part out. So it was a little bit like, hey, we just need gasoline for like our go-to-market strategy because that we know the economics of it. We can scale it. We can go faster. We can hire more people. We can do more marketing programs. So that's like one piece of it. Uh, when we were raising the Series C, I had a decision to make whether I wanted to kind of stay in, a category that has a large TAM, or did I dream about like something way bigger? And I generally am like a
Mhm.
dream way bigger type person. And so that dream for us was to say, contract management as a category is like really great. We are doing really well, and we're one of the leaders and one of the fastest growing companies ever to be founded in that space. But I dream about being the single definitive platform for the office of the general counsel where they would log in and do anything they need in-house for their legal team in one
Ooh.
multi-solution platform. Hat tip to a company that inspires me in the Boston area where I'm based is HubSpot. What is HubSpot's
Hmm.
playbook? They just kept on building more products for the same buyer, right? Marketing automation. They started with that CRM, service tickets, email sequencing tools, dashboards. Now you can do quote generation. You can do payments on it, and it's like they're the definitive multi-solution platform that helps businesses grow faster. I just want to help businesses do legal better with awesome software, and so raising 100 million was also about like what is this vision going to be that is so huge that we need this much amount of capital. And for us it was like I want to go build like 10 products in the next decade, right? And the general counsel, anytime they need software they buy it from LinkSquares. They use a LinkSquares product. And so like that was what I was really passionate about, kind of seeing the inflection point, upgrading our TAM, our total addressable market, to something, I don't know, 5 times bigger, continuing to do something that we do really well as like our initial footing, which is contract management, and then providing the ability to expand from there. So, capital raising is all about that. Like LinkScores has to have a huge enterprise value now. But I feel great about it because we're also dreaming so big that those things can align itself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, how do you intend to be able to scale this now internationally? I mean, it seems like you have a good footing in North America. Like, what are some of the changes that may need to occur for international scaling to certain areas that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean we have customers in like 63 different countries already, and so when we think
Hmm.
about can continue to scale internationally, it's definitely like opening an office or a regional sales office, marketing office in like a pocket that we're very excited about. Maybe that's in APAC or it's in EMEA, and I think that's like a commitment that we'll make in the years to come, which is like getting local folks there to be able to engage with our customer bases like where they are. Obviously, places like Ireland and UK are amazing because there's such a thriving economy in kind of that area, as well as like places like Hong Kong and Singapore, Australia, and uh, the other thing is then thinking about like 24 hours, 7 days a week type of support. And those are things that we'll have to think about in the future. Like how do we continue to scale our support model, implementation, right? Just generally being able to be available to customers across every time zone in the world, which we all also kind of do today, but kind of programmatizing that and scaling that up bigger. And then also just thinking about languages, like businesses don't always run in English, so how do we continue to use technology to provide kind of diversification of languages? And they're all like really exciting opportunities. But when you found a company, and maybe people listening to this are going to found a company, it's like LinkScores is really applicable to every single company in the entire world. Every single business, no matter what business you're in, has contracts for something or another. And when we think about that, we really think about there's a lot of work to do left because every company in the world doesn't use LinkSquares, and we're not going to stop until that day happens.
Yeah. Well, Vishal, I appreciate you coming on. I think you have a great mission, and you're really aspiring to do something that hasn't been done in the category, and you could really dominate this category and improve the efficiencies for lots of corporations, improve the way contracts are done. So I think it's a great mission to have, and I'm excited to see what you continue to do and do next. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on. Take care.